everyone. This is Penny Brown for the MFG Advocate on IMTS TV. Today, we're talking to George Blankenship, a former executive with Tesla, Apple, and The Gap, and we're going to talk all about the future of innovation. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, George.
My pleasure. It was a blast to be here.
So basically, two terms that we hear a lot these days in business are innovation and disruptive thinking. How would you define those terms?
Well, I think innovation is where you step back from the norm of what's going on every day and you identify something that could sort of move what you're doing forward in a big way that's really good for people or society at large. And then what you do is you figure out why is that better and why is it great? And then you figure out how to get there. And that's what innovative thinking, that's what innovation is all about. It's taking the status quo and then just sort of throwing that away and looking to the future of how you could make it much, much better. Disruptive thinking gets you there by looking at things and saying, okay, so what's going on today? But what could be done? What could be done if you thought about what's going on and put a whole bunch of pieces together and said, well, if I did this, this, and this, then maybe something completely different than what's going on today could be the outcome. And that's what disruptive thinking does. And the companies that do it well are the ones that figure out what uniquely they could do that's maybe different from what others are doing. And oftentimes it's not what they can do differently, but it's simply a willingness to go the extra mile and do it. And other people could have thought the same thing, but just wouldn't go the extra mile. And so you have the combination of the disruptive thinking that gets you with a great idea and the conviction to take that innovation and bring it to market, bring it to the public.
Absolutely. So you've worked for Gap and Apple and Tesla, which are some really big and really well-known companies, but how can a smaller company also learn to become more innovative?
Well, you have to go back to Tesla. Tesla's only been around since 2003. And up until 2 years ago, it was still a very small company. And so it wasn't a Daimler or a GM or a Toyota Motor Company. It is tiny in its industry. So in many ways, Tesla is a very, very small company when you think about the size of the auto industry. Apple, when I joined Apple 3 years prior to my joining, they were almost bankrupt. Okay, and so what happens is Steve Jobs came back, and out came the iMac, and then this pipeline of great products. So Apple was a failing company not that long ago, 20 years ago, and then you have like small companies like you're talking about, smaller companies. Think about Nest. The company did a thermostat and a smoke detector and ended up getting bought by Google for over $3 billion, and they were a tiny company. They had one product, a thermostat, So great minds can figure out a niche that can change fundamentally the way things are done, and that's what I think is great about small companies, is they do that, and some of them become big companies, some of them become a part of a big company, like Nest is to Google.
Mm-hmm. Now, along those lines, speaking of Nest and Google, it seems to be the trend, especially in technology these days, is for a smaller startup company to eventually be bought by a larger firm. That's kind of everyone's entrepreneurial dream now. Do you think this is a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's both, okay? Because if you think about the Nest situation, Nest had a certain amount of momentum behind it. Google purchased it, and now think about the momentum it can have in how that one item can be grown to be an entire automated home, because Google can make that happen. So I think it's good in situations like that. If Tesla had been winding up, from a small company to a little bit bigger company, and then got bought by another company, I think that would be a bad thing, because a lot of the conviction to go that extra mile when the CFO is going, whoa, wait a minute. In a big company, you're more reliant on your quarterly results and what happens every single day than you are in a smaller company. So I think like with Tesla, in that situation, it's better that it stay independent and not get gobbled up by a big auto company, because they can continue to run differently than you can in a great big company that's looking every single day at what the analysts are going to say, because in a small company, you just really don't care. Mm-hmm. You're doing something for a reason that you have conviction behind, and that's what Tesla is doing. So I think in some cases it's great because it expands. Other cases it would not be good because it would stifle the innovation.
Absolutely. So this being the MFG Advocate, we have to talk about your manufacturing background. Early in your working days, you were working in a machine shop. So how do you think seeing things get made influence the rest of your career?
Well, I had a blast working at the machine shop, and it was seeing things get made. And what would happen is you'd see this big piece of steel or titanium come in, and then it would go out something that a person could use, you know. And it's like, this is awesome. This is great. And it got me thinking about, well, what could this be? What could be done just a little bit differently that might make this even more awesome or great? And I think it got me thinking from the base, like from the beginning of something. How can it be great when it's actually being used by the customer or the end user at the end? And I think when you start with that foundation, it makes you reflect back a little bit and gives you to step back and maybe see a bigger picture than you would if you just sort of got thrown into something in a marketing class in college, graduated and went to and started marketing things. I think it gives you a basis from which to say, you know, that started as something somewhere and became something great. Now what could it be more?
Well, George, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great talking to you.
Oh, my pleasure. I enjoyed being here. Like I said, I love being around people who actually make things for a living and help others make things. So this has been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been Penny Brown for the MFG Advocate.